In the very beginning, so you're learning the get up, you're learning the swing, the goblet squat. Approach this as a pure practice. Set aside, let's say, 15 minutes per exercise, and just go through, do low reps, let's say sets of 5, no more. Try to learn something, don't try to get smoked. All you're trying to do is learn the moves. Once you finally have learned the moves, then you're ready to progress to our beginner to intermediate programming. And the way it's set up is you're gonna be doing heavier weights for you, for low reps, for an extended period of time. And always pass the talk test before your next set, which means you always can complete the sentence. And in this manner, you're gonna be progressing to more sets with the same heavier weight, moderately heavy weight, while always passing this talk test. And finally moving to a heavier weight. In the get up, you're gonna do several variations that are going to improve your game on the mat, while at the same time making you resilient, making you much more bulletproof. At some point, you can feel, okay, I'm ready for the next level. Then you're going to do the clean and jerk. You're gonna learn the clean and jerk very patiently. You're gonna add a few cleans and jerks in your practice. You're gonna add the mobility drills, and finally you're gonna start training them. That's a total exercise, total body exercise that prepares a grappler, a wrestler, many other athletes, gives them total preparation. Very little, if anything, is needed in addition to your specific practice of your art or your style, in addition to that. And it's going to progress very similar. Approximately once a minute, you're going to do a set of very low reps. And you're gonna keep going, keep going, keep going. Then you're gonna add more sets in the same manner. And you're gonna pass the talk test. Your training, your strength aerobic training is very much like heavy labor. Because heavy labor, that's exactly what it should be like, not like Metcon. All right, what if you're not a grappler? Should you be watching this video? The answer is yes. All these moves are not, some of them are SPP1, which means they have direct carry over to the mat, but all these exercises also have the very powerful GPP effect, which means if you're practicing the swings, the get-ups, the cleans and the jerks, your performance in most athletic events is going to increase. Is there anything that I would modify? Probably the only thing that I would do different if you're not a grappler is you don't have to be so get-up obsessed. So we're giving you a whole lot of different get-up variations with the rotations, with extra presses, 3 different weights. For people who live on the mat, that's absolutely essential. If you do not, you can keep your get-up a little bit more, just a little bit simpler. Also, you can choose to add some presses, some overhead presses. Not a part of our normal program because, again, your shoulders are banged up. And besides, we're giving you plenty of attention to your shoulders that's very strong and very healthy just from the get-ups and the jerks. So perhaps you could do some presses as well. I would say whether you're a grappler or wrestler or not, pull-ups are always great. Just make sure you do not do too many pull-ups. Watch your elbows, watch your wrists. Oh yeah, one more thing you gotta do. When you're training the grip, get yourself one of those rubber bands. Work your finger extensors and then stretch afterwards. Just be considerate to your grip. The clean. It becomes a powerful exercise for training your upper and lower body, and also it acts as a delivery system for overhead lifts, presses, jerks, push presses. Mike, please demonstrate. Thank you, Mike. It looks deceptively simple. It takes some learning, especially for people who have experience in Olympic lifting with the barbell. You need to understand some differences between the barbell and the kettlebell. The primary difference is you can't swing a barbell between your legs. And that's why the barbell imposes a particular groove. The kettlebell you can swing between your legs, thus loading your hip muscles so much stronger, which is exactly what we do. That's why we build our clean not on the foundation of the squat, but in the foundation of the swing. So it's very similar to the swing. It's just the arc becomes so much tighter. There's something else to point out. There's one other difference between the Olympic clean, barbell clean, and the kettlebell clean. With the barbell, the shoulders go up, the body goes up on the toes because you're trying to get that every little ounce of movement Again, because you can't swing a barbell between the legs. We don't have to do that. So it's not really a big deal if your shoulder does come up, but we're really not after that. And we're not really trying to get any air on the tippy toes either. So we're just driving hard like we're performing a swing, and that swing just ends up right here in the rack. The arm has to stay loose. So your legs, your hips are working very aggressively, and your arm stays very, very loose. Your arm is just whipped loose at all times until you just make the contact right here against the body. And then you drop, reload, just like the way you do that just like where you do it in the swing. So let's see a couple more reps, Mike. Let's try them at a 3/4 angle this time. Thank you, Mike. Let's know the groove of the kettlebell. If we start tracking it from the top, so your thumb is pointing this way, and then as the bell is coming down, 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 the thumb is going to point behind you. So the arm very naturally turns. The arm down, 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 turn, and come back up. So it's the most unfortunate analogy of pouring beer out. Just why would you do such a thing, right? But that's what you got to think about. You're just going to pour this beer out as you're dumping the bell. And your arm has to get loose immediately. You cannot muscle this arm. The arm has to get loose. And then on the very end, it's very important that your elbow is fully straight. It's extremely important that you fully straighten out your arm on the bottom of the clean, on the bottom of every dynamic kettlebell pull, because otherwise you're putting very unhealthy stress on your elbow, on your biceps tendon, and so on and so forth. So elbow straight on the bottom, even tense your triceps in the beginning, that might help. And the arm goes completely loose. Which brings me to the point. If you're trying to absorb shock, in striking martial arts, there are two tactics of absorbing impact. It's bracing fully hard, really hard, or just completely going loose, totally going with the flow. I have not heard of any martial art where they recommend use half tension to, you shouldn't do that. You go with tension, you commit to tension, or you commit to relaxation. So the same thing right here. You commit to tension, you do some cute bodybuilding curl, lower it slowly. Please don't do it, okay? Or you just commit to it and you just let go. You just let it go. Just loose. Let it go. And on the bottom, the arm is fully straight. You inhale, sniff the air in, just like in the swing. You brace, you absorb the shock, bam! You power it back out. Let's see it one more time, Mike. Thank you, Mike. So you might be wondering, why is John standing here with this thing right here like we're ready to do a bullfight or something, like, should have been red, right? So the reason for that is to teach you an important skill, or at least drive, not to teach it yet, but drive the point home. The clean, kettlebell clean, has to go very tight against your body. You should not be casting the bell way out in front of you. So you pretty much envision that you're standing in front of a wall. So John is going to make this wall for him. So the idea is to do your cleans without banging the imaginary wall. Thank you, gentlemen. So that's the clean in general. This is the goal. How do we learn it? How do we start with it? We start with the cheat clean. So for the cheat clean, you're going to grab the kettlebell with two hands. So you're going to use the double-handed pistol grip. Grab it with one hand, cover it up with the other hand, swing it between your legs, and bring it into this position. This position is called the rack. In weightlifting, barbell, kettlebell, this position when you're holding the bell right here, it's called the rack. So Mike, please demonstrate how to do it. And just stay right here. Now let go. and kind of get comfortable. So the idea right now is for somebody to walk around and make sure that his rack is really stable and solid. What does that mean? His shoulder is down. It's very important. The shoulder stays down. There is a contact where his lats are tight right here. There's a very solid contact of his forearm against his body. His abs are braced, and he looks generally happy, generally. Let's do a couple more reps with the pistol grip. And park. So you're practicing this pistol grip, single kettlebell clean, and you're starting to feel the groove. Oh, so it goes in this nice tight groove against my body. It's a nice tight arc. I'm not casting it out very far. My weight is staying nicely on the heels. Feels just like the swing. I'm bracing on the top. I'm getting ready to absorb this weight right here. Okay, starting to feel good. So the way we transition from the assisted cleans to single arm cleans is to start letting go of the kettlebell only on the way up. On the way up, you're going to let go. On the way down, you're going to still use your hands. So you're going to start feeling loose on the way up. When you're starting pretty feel loose on the way up, then you're going to start releasing it with the other hand. Before you know it, bang, you got a clean. And once you have the clean, you can progress to some overhead lifts like jerks, push presses, or rather push presses and jerks. The double clean, well, that's going to get your attention. Park two bells side by side, turn the handles in a V shape. Later on, you're going to adjust whichever way you want to go, this way, that way, whatever feels comfortable for you. Same thing is true for single cleans as well. Assume a stance that's wide enough not to bang yourself on the knees with the passing kettlebells. So again, for any double kettlebell drills with the two bells that go between your legs, whether it's cleans or swings, stand wide enough not to bang yourself, but not any wider. Otherwise, comfortable stance. And then the rest of it, you know the drill. John, let's see it. Thank you, John. It's a very powerful exercise. It works your entire body tremendously. It's important that when you finish it, you contract your glutes very strongly, extremely strongly, that you brace yourself very hard. So if somebody were to come around and start beating you up, kicking your legs, punching your stomach, you should stand very, very strong. Do not let your fingers get caught between the handles. So it's best to spear the hands through and then close the hands afterwards. So pause, drop the bells, and carry on. Keep in mind that there's a lot of weight right here. Obviously, you're not going to start with heavy weights, but still, take two bells versus one. When you're dropping them, if you drop them too far forward, you might have a problem with your back. You don't want that. So if for whatever reason you start going your toes, ditch the bells. Otherwise, just remember, you have this invisible wall, and remember to dump the bells into your abs, into your glutes, not into your toes, not into your back. Let's do this from a different side. Thank you, John. Double front squat. Even though it's not a part of your main programming, double front squat is a great teacher of strength and teacher of full body tension. So you already have all the components. You got your goblet squats dialed in. You got your cleans dialed in. Now all you got to do is put them together. Let's see it. Thank you, John. So there are two different ways of doing that. You can go wider, the way John has gone, and go to parallel, which means the top of your knee is a little bit higher than the crease in the hip. Or you could take a narrower stance, the same one used for the goblet squat, and go deeper all the way. So we'll see that in a moment. But let's see it right now. Change the stance. Thank you, John. So you got all the components down. There's nothing new. All you got to do is practice. I guess if there's anything to add, you may interlace your fingers. So you can hold the bells like this, you could, or you can just open up your hands and interlace your fingers. That might make it more comfortable, as if I really care about your comfort. Mike, do you care about their comfort?
I do not.
Okay, do you have any other suggestions?
I think the double kettlebell front squat is, again, it'll teach you so much about tension in the squat, but if you do decide down the road to work with a barbell, this is one of the best ways to teach you about keeping the cylinder and maintaining posture, because these are a pair of 24s. Donnie Thompson, what did he use on his double kettlebell front squats, Pavel?
Donnie Thompson, who squatted way over $1,000, he was using a pair of 40 kilo bells with the kettlebell for his training, so 88 pounders. He found that enough, yeah.
That, and if you haven't tried double kettlebell front squat with double 40s, well, first of all, don't start off with that, but it'll just show you what an amazing tool it is when you've got Donnie Thompson, a guy that had squatted over 1,000 pounds. He used double kettlebell front squats as part of his program, so that's a testament in and of itself.
Yeah, and he used just barely the amount of weight that whatever one of us weighed right here. But it's awkward weight. It's just an ugly, uncomfortable weight. It's kind of what you guys like in BJJ, right? You don't want it to be all cute, nicely stacked, and very like on track for a machine. No, that's just the opposite of a machine. Like take your Smith machine and make it the opposite. This is the opposite of Smith machine. All right, go squat. All right, the double kettlebell military press or the military press is not a part of this program because a lot of you guys grapplers are kind of jacked up and too much pressing for you. That just might be too much. So we're using this with light weights just to establish your mobility and stability baseline. And this is just to prepare you for the jerk, which is going to be the main event for you. John, please demonstrate. Thank you, John. So several points to consider. You know the clean. How do we press? The way we press, the first of all, rule of thumb is never let your shoulders come up. Keep your shoulder down. So you even want to think about just pushing yourself instead of pushing the bells. Push yourself away from the bells, and that is going to keep your shoulder down, keep your shoulder packed. And on the way down, pretend that you're doing a chin-up. So you're pushing yourself away, and you're doing a chin-up, weighted chin-up on the way down. I want to point out to you the mobility levels that we're looking for right here. So when John had the bells overhead, notice that his biceps were pretty much lined up with the ears whenever you saw him from the side. When you watched him from the back and the front, you saw how close his biceps were to his ears. So that's the goal, that's the standard. And you got to be able to walk around with the bells overhead in this position. So test where you're at, film yourself, and then go through the various mobility progressions that we're going to show you, Mike is going to show you, and see where you end up.
So one of the best ways to open up your thoracic spine or your upper back is by using an exercise called the rib grab. So we're going to start in the side lying position, and we're going to get John in a perfectly straight line. Again, ankle, knees, hips, shoulders. From here, we're going to bring his top leg all the way up into flexion, and he is going to hook that top leg with his arm. So we want that thigh to almost be touching his belly up towards his chest. From there, he's going to take his right hand and he's going to place it on his ribs. Okay? In this position, we're just going to perform some basic breathing, and as he exhales, he's going to rotate his upper back, but also extend his upper back towards the ground. So we're going to breathe in, exhale, and again, the breathing will help facilitate the rotation towards the floor. So he's going to breathe, he's going to exhale and let all of the air out. So the breathing is super important when it comes to developing good mobility in the upper body. Now, this is something that we shouldn't force. Let the breathing do the work. If you feel like you're stuck, cycle a few more breaths and gradually work towards the floor. So this is fantastic to do at the beginning of your training session, or if you do have some restrictions overhead, this will absolutely help you. So there are certain exercises which just check a lot of boxes when it comes to mobility, and the Bretzel with a B, not a P, is one of those exercises. We're going to show you how to do that right now. So John is going to be in the side lying position, and his body in a nice straight line from his ankle to his knee to his hip to his shoulders to his head. So from this position, he's going to bring his top leg up, and he's going to flex that hip. You're going to see that he's hooking that top leg with his bottom hand. Now from this position, what John's going to do is he's going to grab his foot right approximately at the ankle joint, and he's going to maintain this position. So now what we're going to focus on is two things. One, he's going to be actively pulling this leg back towards me into hip extension. Once he gets to a position where he feels a good stretch, he's going to take a big breath in, he's going to exhale, and he's going to breathe and rotate so his shoulder gradually moves towards the floor. Now, once he hits end range, we're going to cycle another breath, and we're just going to keep repeating on that. So it's important that this leg stays put and it doesn't move towards me, that it stays into that same position, and that at the same time, again, he can actively pull his bottom leg towards me. So again, we've got some nice rotation of the upper back, and we've also got some nice mobility in the lower body as well. So if you're looking for an exercise that really covers a lot of bases, the Bretzel is one of your best options. So one of the easiest ways to improve shoulder mobility in the overhead position is by using a pull-up bar. So first we're going to start off with John basically deloading his body weight, and then eventually we'll have him hanging. So we're going to start with a shoulder width grip, and then from here he's going to align his biceps by his ears, and then he's just going to slowly unload, and he's not hanging quite yet, but he's just unloading the position. And what he's going to focus on here is just breathing and letting gravity do the work to give him that overhead mobility. So we're going to hang out for a little bit here, cycle some breaths. It's a very, very simple way to do it. Maybe 4 to 5 breaths. And then what we can do is we can actually narrow the hands just a little bit to, again, just hit the shoulder joint a little bit differently, but the same rules apply. We're going to hang, we're going to unload, and let the breathing do the work. So these two progressions are very, very simple. Now, from there, we can get a little bit creative and we can start to add in some body rotations. So we're going to have John just start in the overhead position one more time, and now he's going to really hang a little bit more, and all he's going to do is he's just going to rotate his lower body in one direction or the other to really open up the lats in one side of the shoulder, and then he's going to rotate in the opposite way and do the same thing. So this is one of those exercises that you're going to unload, but you're going to play around with the position. You're going to explore positions to see where you feel tight and to do exactly what you need to improve your overhead mobility. One quick thing, if you feel any pinching or pain in a certain position, you're going to want to avoid that. But hitting these mobility drills and then going into your overhead lifts, that's a great way to cement it. So we can hit some hanging, and then once you get those double kettlebells overhead or single kettlebell overhead, that load is going to cement that mobility. So this is a really nice progression to quickly improve your overhead mobility.
Before you do the kettlebell jerk, one of the most powerful strength and conditioning exercises in existence, you need to learn how to do the push press. And before the classic push press, the long push press. Observe. John, please demonstrate. Thank you, John. So what would be the purpose, other than just making you really miserable, of going down all the way to absorb the shock of the kettlebell as opposed to just dipping lightly and then driving after that. There are several reasons for that. A typical mistake that many people make when they learn to do the jerk is to lose the tightness through their stomach. So whenever you dip, it's very easy to disconnect from your stomach, and that's totally unacceptable. If you start with the long push press, you're going to have to learn the hard way, because when you, with a kettlebell in the rack, going all the way into the front squat, it's going to keep you tight, whether you like it or not. So that's one reason. The second reason is going to teach you a few things about the direction of the drive, which is very useful. A third point is going to teach you a lot about absorbing the shock of the falling kettlebell correctly. So there are several key points to absorbing the shock in this particular drill, in classic push presses and in jerks as well. Number one is you have to dissipate the momentum over distance. What does it mean? If you fall on the ground or on the mat, you don't want to just hit the deck with your butt and stay there. You want to hit the ground and roll. So by doing that, you dissipate the momentum over distance. This is exactly the same thing that we do when we absorb the shock of a kettlebell or kettlebells when we do push presses, when we do jerks. At this particular point, you have a lot of distance. You go all the way down. Later on, you're going to optimize it for the classic jerk, for the classic push press. The second point is you have to distribute the impact over the largest possible surface. That's one of the reasons if you fall, you want to slap the mat with your arm as well, because that provides a much greater surface to distribute the impact. So what does that mean specifically for the push press or the jerk? John, would you please assume the rack position? So when here's here in the rack, if he gets hit, let's say he gets hit with a roundhouse kick or some other kind of a thing, he would want to have a nice large surface to absorb this impact, and he want to go straight into his body. He wouldn't want to be separated, and he wouldn't want to take it just in one particular spot somewhere. So so the kettlebell is going to be sitting in this triangle very comfortably. So it's not that the bell is going to be hitting him here or anywhere else, or his arm is going to hit him in just one spot. No, it's the unit of the arm plus the kettlebell is going to come in and hit him through this triangle right against the body. Which leads us to the next study, brace for a punch. You have to brace like for, oh. I didn't have to punch, but he did brace. And that's the important thing, right? So what is bracing exactly? Bracing is exactly what it sounds like. Bracing is ready to absorb, to take a punch. It's not sucking your stomach in, trying to look pretty. It's not pushing your belly out against the belt, as some powerlifters do. No, you just wall up your abdominal wall. You just make it a strong and solid wall. And leads us to the final point. As you get punched, or as you absorb the shock of the kettlebell falling, you need to allow some air to get knocked out of you. Sorry, John, this just cannot be helped. So he braces, but then he just lets a little bit air get knocked out of him. The same idea. If you hold your breath, all of it, when you get hit, it's going to be very uncomfortable. If, on the other hand, if you're just going to let it all out, you're just not going to be very happy either. So there's that happy medium. You brace, and you let some air get knocked out of you. So those are the highlights of shock absorption. Let me go over them one at a time, one more time. Number one, dissipate over distance. Number two, distribute over a large surface, the impact over a large surface. Number three, brace for a punch. Number four, let some air get knocked out of you. So these points apply to the long push press, the traditional push press, and the jerk as well, and to some situations in life and in some other places too. So let's go over a few more technique points for the long push press. So you've performed your clean, in this case, single arm clean. Later on, we'll do double as well. You know the way you do it. Then you change your stance. Traditionally, most people find it more comfortable to perform jerks and push presses from a stance that's a little bit narrower than it would be that they're comfortable to clean with. Not always, but that's fairly typical. So you perform the clean, You adjust your stance. Then you take a breath, brace yourself. Pretty much you're about to perform a front squat. You go down all the way to the bottom of the front squat. Where is all the way? That's the question. Ideally, all the way is when your hamstrings are sitting on your calves. But that is only provided that your squat form is perfect. That means that, as with the goblet squat we have discussed earlier, the same fundamental squat rules must be observed. Not just the goblet squat, not with the kettlebells, with barbell, with any implement. So the rules are as follows. Your lower back never flexes. So you don't tuck your tail in. Your spine stays straight, nearly straight. The normal curve that you exhibit when you walk around. That's number one. Number two, your knees are always tracking your toes, always. So the knees may not bow in. They always have to track the toes. And your heels may never come off the ground. So you have to keep those heels planted at all times. So oh yeah, and you can't do any funny stuff with your feet either. Like if you watch somebody squatting or doing a push press or jerk or anything else that involves squatting, and you see the feet doing some funny dance, rolling in, rolling out, the big toe is coming up, you got a problem. And you need to go and get it fixed because you have some sort of condition, you have some sort of asymmetry that needs to be addressed. If you do not fix that, if you keep training with your foot rolling, knee bowing, doing stuff like that, you're going to pay for it sooner or later. So in order to stay in the game for a long time, perfect mechanics. So you got your perfect squat mechanics, you go down as deep as you can to maintain this mechanics. John is able to do a full squat, you might not be able to do that. That's okay, so you just go as deep as you can. I'm gonna say this one more time, you must keep your heels down on the ground. It's very tempting to let your heels come up. Do not do that. As soon as you have bottomed out, as soon as you reach the bottom point of your squat, you're still holding all your air, and you just spring out of there. You just drive it out of there like you're kicking the deck. And you're powering up, and just as you're finishing with that powerful hip extension on the top, the way you would from the swing, just as you're finishing right here, you just punch it in, and you add that acceleration from your arm and shoulder. Then, on the very top, that's your time to relax. So your arm is overhead, you get to be so relaxed. You can take a breath. You can even take 2 breaths, even 3 breaths if you absolutely must. Then you're going to inhale again, and you're going to let the kettlebell drop. So you inhale, you brace, the belt drops, and you go over that entire sequence over again. So absorb the shock, go all the way down. John, let's see this one more time, and how about we try to take a slightly different angle? Let's face that way. See, the arm stays loose on the drop and on the drive. Thank you, John. Mike, let's hear what you have to say about this.
So once you get the kettlebell in the rack position, it is very important from a safety standpoint, but from a performance standpoint that, again, we don't change the shape of our spine. So we get that kettlebell in the rack, we stack our ribs over our pelvis, and that is the shape of our spine and our posture for the duration of the drill. If you drop into your squat and you lose the position, you lose stability, and you put your back at risk. So make sure that once you get the kettlebell in the rack position, you implement that power breath, you maintain the positioning, because that's gonna give you the power and the stability that you need to get that kettlebell overhead.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, finally the classic push press. Observe. Thank you, John. Please park. What's the difference? The obvious difference is you're just not dipping down as low, but there are a few subtleties as well. First of all, so how deep do you dip? In this particular exercise, you go down as low as necessary to generate the maximal power. What does it mean? If you were to do a jump, a vertical jump or a broad jump, if you barely dipped your knees just a little bit in your hips, you're not going to fly very far or high. If, on the other hand, you go into a full squat, you're not going to do very well either. So there is that happy medium in the range of motion that your body will figure out exactly where that range of motion is. So after some practice, you'll find this is how deep I need to dip. Let's talk about speed a little bit. The first dip is not too fast. If you go down too fast, you know, like those cartoon characters that suddenly it runs off and the hat keeps hanging for a few seconds afterwards. You don't want that to happen with your kettlebell, do you? No, you don't, I'm telling you. So it's moderate speed, the first dip. And then you drive, aggressively drive. And make sure you keep driving with your legs and your hips, your glutes. Make sure your cheeks are contracted on the top. And only after that, that arm kicks in. If you start pushing too soon with the arm, you're not going to generate the same power. This is the same thing as with a punch. You don't punch too soon with the arm. You punch with your lower body, and then the arm comes in for the action later. The exact same idea. Let's talk about the weight distribution. Keep the weight more or less over the center of your feet. Do not go to your toes. It's going to be very tempting for you to go up on your tippy toes, but do not. And I have to say that on the way up, it's not really tragic, not desirable, but not tragic. On the way down, you could possibly mess up your knees if you don't know what you're doing. There are special kettlebell skills. Some people learn how to go up on their toes to absorb the shock, very similar to that in the jump, but those are specialized skills for kettlebell people, not for grapplers. So, center of the foot, take a dip at a moderate speed, then accelerate from there. As you stay upright. So you have to keep this bell in the rack right here very, very tight, but you still have to stay, pretty upright. Maintain the brace. Remember the lessons of the brace that you learned from the double clean, double front squat, and the long push press. And then drive aggressively. When you finish with something that we call the active static. Active static means that you're going to keep pushing and driving into that bell for just a little bit while. Just keep exerting your strength. John, please demonstrate. See, he keeps applying the pressure. Thank you, John. And I'll address a couple more points, something to really watch out for. In the long push press, when you're going all the way down into the squat, it's much easier to maintain a neutral spine, straight spine that Mike has stressed you must maintain. When you're dipping down just a little bit, it's very tempting to just pretty much perform a crunch. And this is not desirable. This is not something you want for your back. So you want to maintain your spine neutral, pretty much straight, and brace that neutral spine when you're absorbing the shock. Again, the depth, how deep you go, that's up to you. But that's individual, and this time we're just absorbing it. We're not shooting that bell out yet. So it's, again, slower first dip, powerful drive, the bell flies up, then after that you drop, absorb it, pause, reset your breath, and do that again. So that's the essence of the single arm push press. But my colleague Mike is going to have to say a couple more things as well.
So obviously John has done this before, but it's very important that once we get the kettlebell in the rack position and we initiate our first dip, that as we dip, our elbow doesn't come off of the ribs, because that's gonna disconnect our arm from our torso, and we're gonna lose all of our bracing and all of our stability. So as you have that initial dip, elbow stays, cylinder stays, the kettlebell goes overhead. Remember, the lower body is doing the work, and it catches, and as Pavel mentioned on the way back down, basically when the elbows hit the ribs, we reabsorb that impact. So the timing is very important on the push press. But again, make sure the elbow doesn't peel off the body, especially on that first dip as we accelerate the kettlebell overhead.
And this is an excellent point, Mike, and this is a point especially to be made to those athletes who have done Olympic lifting in the past, who have done cleans and jerks with a bar, with a long bar. You need to understand that a barbell is not the most ergonomic device for this exercise. Obviously, the barbell allows you to lift a lot of weight, and that's essential for that. With the kettlebell, if they're huge, they will be so displaced. We don't want that. But the barbell forces your wrist and your elbow in the position that's really vulnerable. For competitive weightlifters, there's no way around that. That's just a part and parcel of the sport. Every sport has its own dangerous elements that you just accept as a part of that sport. In grappling, you have your own set of problems with your neck and elsewhere. But there's absolutely no point in taking on the hazards from another sport that don't belong in your sport. So putting your wrists in danger of damage, overstretching and damage, doing the same thing with your elbows, it's unacceptable and it's unnecessary. Fortunately, the ergonomics of the kettlebell allows you not to put your wrists in these weird, unnatural positions because you get plenty of that on the mat, let's face it. And the feeling of transitioning, of transferring the momentum from the lower body to the upper body through this triangle of power is just awesome. It's very awesome. It's very ergonomic. You're going to like it. I'll make you like it. And now for the really miserable double long push press. Observe. Thank you, Mike. Please park him. All right, let's talk about this briefly. What's the difference between the double long push press and the single push press? Double the weight. No, it's like exponentially 4 times as miserable. So that's very, very beautiful. But the double long push press also presents greater demands on your mobility, obviously, overhead, much greater demands on your midsection, and it really does prepare you to perform some very, very powerful jerks. So do not hesitate to go much lighter than you would think you would want to go and do this exercise. The idea is exactly the same. Clean the bells, change the stance if necessary, take a breath, go into a full squat for you, that is, as deep as you can. Do it safely, drive out of there. As you're finishing the drive, that's when your arms kick in. So you're finishing, your arms kick in. It's a very similar idea to that of a punch. So the hip is working first, and the arm and shoulder are working last. The same idea. On the top again, you can just relax, chill, take a couple breaths, and then you take a breath and go back down again. Let's see it from this angle, Mike. I'd like to point out something that I hope you have not missed. I'd like to point out the thoroughness and the attention to detail that my colleague has exhibited when he was approaching the kettlebells, when he was parking the kettlebells. It's very common to see in the gym, somebody approaches a weight, kettlebell, barbell, any other weight that was unfortunate to be disrespected. Just come over, grab it, and start doing some stuff. That's nonsense. It's just like shooting. You have to prepare yourself. You have to get yourself in a perfect position. Your breathing has to be right. So Mike has approached the kettlebell correctly, got himself in the right stance, got his breathing right, mentally got himself ready for that. And after that, he parked the bells, and only after he parked the bells, the set was over. Just remember, the set is not over until the bells are there, until the bells are parked on the deck. I'm going to say something else to you as well. When you're performing this type of level of preparation for every rep, and there are very many first reps in your training, it's much harder. Purely in terms of calories even. Soviet scientists did studies with weightlifters, and they compared how energetically demanding were lifts. They were using 80% of their max, and they were doing singles, or they were doing sets of 2, 3, or 4 reps. And they found that the first rep was always 35% more energetically demanding. Getting something started so much harder. It's harder physically, it's harder mentally. It's very tempting to just skip by it, but the more solid first reps you're going to have in your training, the better your training is going to be, the better results you're going to get. John, do you have something else to add to this segment?
I don't really have anything to add, but I would just emphasize the importance of the bracing, which is why we do it so much with the lighter bell, with the single kettlebell version, because now that you're doing a heavier load, it's that much more important, and it's generally the first thing that people forget about when they go through this motion. So just really keep that in mind when you're training this movement.
Ladies and gents, on to the next segment. And the double push press. John, please demonstrate. The technique is exact, identical copy of the single kettlebell push press with a couple subtleties. One subtlety is watch your fingers. Do not let your fingers get caught between the handles. You can do that. Everybody makes that mistake once. Like my father says, you can eat any type of mushrooms at least once. So the same thing, you can catch your fingers between the kettlebell handles when doing double jerks or push presses or cleans once. What else to watch out for? Otherwise, everything is identical. An unrushed descent to the first dip, maintaining the contact, that triangle contact on the first dip, maintaining that contact on the drive. Do not separate this triangle of power from your body. Then you drive, kick the leg. You just kick the legs into the deck, and you pull up your kneecaps on the top, you contract your cheeks on the top, and then you just drive. Then you drive with the arms. Then you can choose to pause briefly, or not so briefly. Take a breath. Drop them, absorb them. Remember, the dip that you take for absorbing the shock does not have to be of the same depth as the dip that you take for the drive. So optimize whatever feels good, whatever is efficient, and whatever does not necessarily bang you up. A drum roll, ladies and gentlemen, the jerk. Observe. Thank you, Mike. Please park. The jerk. The difference between the jerk and the push press is the jerk allows you to use more weight or do more reps, and that comes from that added second dip. So when the weight becomes too heavy, let's say you've done the drive with the legs, and you're pushing with the arm, but that's just not enough, and then you just drop right under it. That's called the second dip, the second dip.
There's an element of coordination in here where you're pushing yourself away from the bell. You're not pressing the bell up because conceivably the load is very heavy. You can't press it, so you're pushing yourself underneath. Obviously, it's very useful in jiu-jitsu or any kind of combat sport where you need to make space. You can't actually push the person away from you. You push yourself away from them, whether it's on the ground or on your feet. So just that, there's a little bit of carryover there between pushing yourself away from the bell underneath and an opponent on the mat.
The simplest, not the easiest, but the simplest way to learn how to do the jerk is simply to get tired in the push press. It's a rare exercise. Most often, when you're trying to learn skills or improve skills, fatigue usually works against you. But there are some skills that stand out that they do become better as a result of fatigue. One example from martial arts is roundhouse kick. If you keep doing roundhouse kicks until you're very, very tired, eventually your hips get loose and your kicks become better. So the same thing that happens with the push press when you're trying to learn the jerk. So you take a moderate-sized kettlebell and you start doing push presses, And then when things are getting really ugly and hard, suddenly you're just going to figure out how to do the second dip. But let me give you a couple of tips anyway. So first of all, the second dip has to be extremely quick. It's the fastest action in the jerk, the fastest by far. A colleague of ours, Randy Hauer, talked about multiple stages of acceleration in the jerk. There's always something accelerating. So you start out with the first dip, it's fairly slow. The drive, it's faster. And then the second dip, it's extremely fast. Very, very fast. Slow, faster, fast. That's how the sequence of the jerk goes. And then after that, you just reestablish yourself again. Make sure you just own that kettlebell overhead. You pause, take a breath if necessary, and drop it and absorb it just exactly the same way that you did it in the push press. Let's do this one more time. Mike, please. Let's go this way. Thank you, Mike. I'd like to add one more thing. Unlike in the push press, it's totally fine if your heels come off the deck as you're driving, just as you're driving, not as you're dropping, as you're driving. Enjoy the pain. And now the long cycle, or clean and jerk. Observe. Thank you, Mike. Well, you already have all the components. You got the clean down, you got the jerk down. The problem is this, it's not a linear thing, like, well, clean is hard and jerk is hard, so two of them are twice as hard. No, they're like 4 times as hard. This is the most comprehensive exercise you can find. So if you're looking for one exercise to address your strength and conditioning needs, this would be it. Of course, the doubles are even better, but it takes a long time to develop the shoulder mobility and stability to do doubles. Singles, that's a great start. Work up to a heavy kettlebell in this exercise, and you're going to be very impressed with yourself on the mat, and other people will be more impressed. the people you're rolling with. So what's the difference? Is there any difference particularly between cleans done separately and jerks done separately, or putting them together as one? Not really. It just becomes a very smooth and seamless progression. You clean, you pause, you dip, you drive, you re-clean, and so on and so forth. Thank you, Mike. And ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the pain. The double jerk. John, please demonstrate. Thank you, John. It takes a lot of preparation to get yourself to the level when you have the shoulder mobility and stability to do the double kettlebell jerk. So take your time to get there, but it's really worth it. A number of the high-level BJJ practitioners, black belts at StrongFirst, they swear by the long cycle clean and jerk, and just the jerk itself. It's a very powerful exercise, just have the patience. You already know how to do that. So the only one possible concern is that you're not quite getting the second dip. As the weights are getting heavier, you just are starting to second guess yourself. So if you are, we have a corrective drill for that. So we're going to separate the jerk, split it up into the drive by doing just half jerks, and we're going to add the second dip to it later. So John, please demonstrate half jerks. Thank you, John. Notice that unusually, he performed them non-stop. So this is one of those exercises that's better done at a high tempo. Your body really starts picking it up, starts really feeling what is happening. So pretty much you are dipping like you normally do for the jerk or the push press, and you're driving, but you're completely keeping your arms and shoulders out of it. So you're just pretty much launching the kettlebells just by using your lower body. So keep going in this manner, and then you'll start feeling when the bells are weightless. And when the bells are weightless, that's when you'll be able to stretch yourself under and perform that second dip. John, would you please demonstrate, do several half jerks, and then go straight into the jerk whenever you feel comfortable. Victory. Thank you, John.
Okay, so one of the amazing benefits of the half jerk is it really helps you with your timing. Because we're dipping and we're driving and then we're reabsorbing those kettlebells, it's really going to teach you about the timing, because if you get that kettlebell up and you dip too quickly, you're going to actually feel that it's really tough to manage the kettlebells if your timing is off. So it's a great way to not only, again, teach timing, but it's going to give you some feedback as to when you should be popping up and then when you should be absorbing, because you'll feel it when it's right, but you'll also feel it when your timing is off. So it's a nice way to dial some things in and, again, just improve your overall timing when you're performing the kettlebell jerk.
You'll be hard-pressed to find a single exercise that delivers more for your strength, power, conditioning, and resilience than the double kettlebell clean and jerk, or what Russians call it, the long cycle. Observe. Thank you, John. That's just poetry in motion. Love this exercise. He loves it less, but I love it. It's awesome. So the double clean and jerk, and it's outstanding full body exercise that covers absolutely all the bases: legs, grip, bracing, lats, shoulders, triceps, biceps, whatever. List all those small ditzy little muscles for which you pick a million exercises and just stop doing that nonsense. Just do the long cycle. So do remember again, just wanted to remind you again, the fingers, do not get your fingers trapped. Otherwise, the only difference, you already know, have the components. You got the cleans down, double cleans, you got the double jerks down. There's only one thing to keep in mind. Some people will find that they need to change the stance between jerks and cleans. John is comfortable cleaning and jerking from the same stance. Some of you might not be. So you might clean from a wider stance, bring it in, jerk, step into a wider stance. So if you are changing the stance, the best way to do it would be in motion. So let's say you're doing the clean. So you're dropping the clean, step. And let's say you're dropping later, step. So doing this in motion rather than shuffle and dance afterwards. That's about the only difference. So this exercise is very simple to do after you have other components down, but do not confuse simple and easy. No amount of strength and conditioning can replace a high level of skill. But when the skill level is the same, the stronger and more conditioned opponent shall prevail. We hope that this video will help you dominate your opposition. Power to you!